Hey, how's it going? I'm Ed Lee, and in this video, you'll be learning how to teach your dog to sit. Typically, the sit is one of the first behaviors that people teach their dog. It's an easy skill that also teaches your dog the fundamentals of positive reinforcement training. Okay, so to teach the sit, start by placing a lure near your dog's nose. So remember, a lure can be a treat, kibble, toy, or sound. If you're in the early stages of your dog's training, typically I find food is way easier to work with. So start with that if you're having some difficulty. So when you present the lure, your dog may start to mouth your hand, and totally normal. It's a great indicator that your dog is motivated to learn. So these motivational indicators are commonly referred to as free shaping. And your dog may start to show a variety of free shaping behaviors in an attempt to release the lure. This can include mouthing, batting at your hand, lying down, or other similar behaviors. So because we're teaching sit, the only behavior you want to capture, though, is the one where your dog's butt touches the ground. And as soon as that happens, mark and reward the behavior. So to repeat the exercise, simply just back up from your dog, and there should be enough encouragement for them to stand up. So once you've reset to the starting position, just repeat the exercise and don't forget to use the marker the very second your dog's butt touches down again. Once you can reliably get your dog to sit by using just a lure, then that's a sign that you've successfully captured the behavior. So remember, be patient with this first stage. Some dogs just need more time to figure it out. So when you're using a lure, just wait, don't say anything, because you want your dog to perform the sit all on their own. So now that you've captured the sit with your dog, the next step is to add a gesture. To aid in the success of implementing a gesture, I find that starting off with a warm-up by continuing to use the lure is very helpful because this will create some momentum. So when your dog is starting to anticipate the path of the exercise, remove the lure altogether. Then perform the gesture very clearly as if you still had the lure in your hand. If your dog sits after you perform the gesture, then mark and reward very generously. Repeat until the gesture is reliably triggering the sit. So with the gesture now in place, it's time to add a verbal cue. So simply just start by clearly saying the word sit, then wait a second, and then perform that gesture. If your dog sits, mark and reward very generously. So you want to reward very generously at this stage in order to reinforce that behavior. Eventually, we can reliably trigger the sit with a verbal cue, slowly start to fade out the gesture, and over time, it looks something like this. Sit. Okay, let's go. Sit. Let's go. Sit. 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 Let's go. Sit. Good job. Now that you've taught your dog how to sit, you have to teach them the concept of duration through the use of a release cue. So without a release cue, most dogs I find tend to only sit for a short period and then they get up on their own. And typically a sit should have a duration though. So the reason for this I found is because sit is more of a management tool for preventing your dog from moving in, for example, areas with busy traffic, areas with young children or the elderly, areas with other dogs, or during events where your dog just needs to remain still. So let's teach your dog the release cue. First, ask your dog for a sit, and then when that happens, mark and reward. Then say the verbal cue release, wait a second, and then back away enthusiastically. If your dog doesn't follow, just try making silly sounds or patting your knees. When your dog follows, mark and reward. Sit. Release. Good job. Sit. Release. To prove that your dog truly understands the verbal cue release, you'll have to use a process called action and word desensitization. This process ensures that no sudden movements or words, except for release, will release your dog from a sit. Essentially, we are teaching our dog to remain seated while around any distraction. To do this, first place your dog into a sit, then do small body movements such as raising an arm or leg. Nothing too dramatic at first. So it's very important to do it at a low intensity at first. So no sudden large movements. If your dog remains still, mark and reward. As your dog excels, start to make the movements a lot larger and more exciting. But however, if your dog becomes too excited, just mark that threshold and work well below it. And then try again, but with significantly reduced excitement, and then just kind of build your way out from there. So just make sure your dog is always winning is the key. So next we're going to use our voice as a distraction. Use a word or phrase that you think might cause your dog to stand up. For example, hey, cute dog, or hey, can I pet your dog? After doing this, if your dog still remains seated, mark and reward, because that's exactly what you want. You don't want your dog to move when those things are happening. But if your dog is having difficulty with this, then just start off with a whisper, like whispering a distraction, and then build up the intensity as your dog excels.
Hi, cute dog. Hi, how are you? Can I pet you?
So the final step to proofing the release is to randomly say the word release during the exercise amidst the other distractions. Remember, it is very important to keep your distractions at random to really proof your dog's understanding of staying in a sit. Over time, your dog will stand up from a sit only when the cue release is used and remain seated when seeing or hearing all other distractions.
Hey, buddy, can I pet your dog? Release. Sit. Hi. Hey, what's your name? Release. Good job, Oda.
So that's how you teach your dog how to sit with a duration. Remember, always be patient with your dog, and if they can't sit immediately, then that's okay. Always work with your dog's threshold and don't be afraid to take a break and try again later. For those of you who are having difficulty with teaching your dog a new behavior, then be sure to check out my troubleshooting guide, which will give you a few tips and tricks. If you're enjoying these dog training videos, then be sure to support me on Patreon. By doing so, you allow me to keep making these videos on a regular basis. So head over to my Patreon where you can find many different ways to contribute. Any support helps me to correctly educate the dog owner community on the latest science and evidence-based methods so your dog can be the best dog they can be. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Ed Lee's Dog Training. Thanks, and see you in the next video.